from Gotham, everyone. My name is Dominic, and you're watching The Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back with another list video for all of you. Today we're looking at 5 great Batman comic books that I believe deserve a second look. These may be titles that don't always get positive reviews or maybe are kind of glossed over or forgotten about, but I think should definitely be reevaluated and given another chance. I'm so excited to talk about this one today. Before we do, I do want to just shout out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, definitely check out their website with the link in my description. And if you see something you like, you can even use my code, TheComicBookReport, at checkout to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or the code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a great way to support the channel. Thank you for considering. Now let's get started with today's Batman list. First up today, Batman Their Dark Designs by James Tynion IV and Gilliam March. I think for me, this is one of my absolute favorite Batman reads from recent years. This actually kicks off the James Tynion era on Batman, not to be confused with his incredible run on Detective Comics, which was also very, very good. No, this is Tynion when he really jumped into the Batman title himself. This also leads directly into the Joker War story arc, if you're familiar with that. But for whatever reason, I don't feel like Their Dark Designs is talked about that much, and for my money, it is actually the high bar for the Tynion era on the Batman title. I absolutely love this story, and I was really encouraged. This is a volume 1 again for the Tynion run, and because of that, I don't feel like you need to have read that much leading into it. If you have a functional knowledge or interest in Batman, I think you have everything you need to pick up this book from the shelves. At its core, it is a total mystery book that I think really goes into some of the detective qualities of Batman in ways I really like. There's also a lot of different timelines and flashback narratives happening throughout Their Dark Designs. Essentially, there's kind of a perfect crime that starts going off across Gotham City, and we find Catwoman remembering her time with a small group of criminals in Gotham. I believe the Riddler, Penguin, and maybe the Joker, who are all kind of held sway by this sort of cryptic sort of figure known as the Designer, who believes he has crafted the perfect crime. So we have that going on in a past narrative. We have Catwoman realizing that that might be happening in present-day Gotham, but now she's on the side of the angels, kind of helping out Batman, and so she is trying to fight her own past without Batman becoming wiser to it. Batman, of course, does get caught up in this whole dramatic event, and this might not sound like the best premise, but honestly, it is even better executed than it sounds, and I already thought personally it sounded pretty good. I had to include this on the list because I think some people might have read this and passed it over, and I think some might have skipped it completely to go into things like Joker War or Fear State, the more publicized big events that happened during Tynion's era. But I think that that would be a mistake, and I think that this deserves a revisit because I think it's just that strong of a story. It is a ton of fun, it has a low barrier to entry for new or prospective readers, and I think that it just shows so many great qualities of what make a Batman book great. Extremely character driven, an emphasis on the detective mystery aspect, really good stuff. Next on my list, Batman and the Monster Men by Matt Wagner. This was both written and illustrated by Matt Wagner, and this is an incredible Batman kind of standalone story. It also serves as a volume 1 as part of his Dark Moon Rising kind of little run here on Batman, followed up by Batman and the Mad Monk, which was also quite good by Wagner. This is another great example of something that can be read with very, very little previous reading, basically no prerequisite reading required in my mind. This story is also set early in the crime fighter's career, so this is before he has characters like Robin or the Bat family helping him, and it's really just Batman stripped down to the base essentials, and we see again a lot of the classic aspects of Batman. This book also has him facing off against characters like Hugo Strange, which is a really iconic Batman villain that is not utilized nearly enough in modern comics, in my opinion. The art throughout is heavily stylized and just gorgeous from Wagner. If you've never read some of his stuff, it is pretty impressive. This is is amongst one of my favorites. He also did the DC Trinity book. I know he's also popular for works like Grendel over at some independent publishers. Wasn't as much a fan of that myself, but this Batman book, absolutely striking. I did review this on my channel some time ago for those interested who want to check it out. Why I think that this deserves a second look is because this is one that for whatever reason I think also just doesn't get talked about enough. I consider this kind of a classic Batman work that I think every Batman fan should maybe check out for themselves. It has a very old school kind of noir feel to it. The look has that kind of dated but timeless quality that I think a lot of Batman classic fiction has. I love the use of a villain like Hugo Strange. I think it's really a cool alternative to some of the masked and brightly colored villains that Batman often fights. It's a little bit more cerebral but still twisted. Really interesting Batman read. It always stays with me. I think about it pretty frequently, and it's just such a fun read. I believe that this actual edition may be out of print, but you can find it digitally or on secondary marketplaces. There's also a Batman Matt Wagner collection that I believe includes this. At any rate, a really fun Batman read. Whether you read it once a long time ago or you haven't had a chance to really take a look, definitely consider reading or reevaluating. I think that there is so much meat on the bone here for a Batman book. A stellar read. Next on my list today, Batman Black and White by various different creators. This is really an art piece first and foremost, at least in my mind. It's the first volume of I think 5 or 6 volumes within this series. I know there's also a hardcover kind of omnibus edition that collects most of this. It's essentially a sequence of vignettes or short stories that all depict a very quick Batman story, usually with different writers and artists, very different styles throughout this book. Everything's done in black and white, and it kind of gives you a best of little like snippets of Batman from some of the industry's best. There are some really gripping stories in here, and I think having that more compressed, shorter story format really does a prioritization of what makes story mechanics important and what to stress. In the same way that short story fiction is different than novel writing, so too are the stories here in Batman Black and White to something like a bigger graphic novel, maxi series, or run. I do think that this collection is often overlooked or is kind of passed up and not really given a lot of attention, but I think that there's a lot to be said about this book. This again is just the volume 1, but the whole conceit of this series is just fascinating to me. It feels like a big art experiment, and I think it's just really effective. I love seeing the various art styles here, and I love that each of the tales within this volume tells a very distinct and unique story. In fact, one of my all-time favorite Batman stories I've ever had the privilege of reading is actually, I believe, the first story within this collection. Batman breaks into a morgue or mortuary to conduct a kind of examination of a woman's body after she was murdered. The whole story is basically him talking to this dead victim about how he's going to help her get justice. And it's just really moving. We get to see different layers of Batman's heart in this little story, that it shows me the connection he has with the citizens of Gotham he tries to save, and how much he just yearns for a justice that is often denied these people. It's a really incredible tale, and it's just one of just many works in this book here. I absolutely think that this should be experienced by a lot of seasoned Batman fans out there. I think new readers could appreciate it as well, but I think for someone who really understands the Batman character, something like Batman Black and White should definitely be given a second look. Really powerful stories here. Maybe not all of them are winners, but there's more than a few that are definitely stand out. And hey, while I have you here, if you're enjoying this video and you also like things like comic book reviews and you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I encourage you to do so. It'd be great to have you aboard. Thanks for thinking about it. Now let's keep going. Next up on our list of Batman books that deserve a second look, of course, Batman by Tom King. This is the era of Batman that kicks off the Batman Rebirth era, and for my money, Tom King is one of the industry's best, but for whatever reason, his tenure on Batman is a very polarizing subject. I think some people believe he was kind of more focused on the romance between Batman and Catwoman than really any other storytelling mechanic or narrative throughout his entire run, and while I definitely see that perspective, I think that there is a lot of beauty and great moments within the Tom King Batman era. I had an absolute blast going through it myself. This edition we're flipping through right now is one of the Deluxe editions, which is an oversized hardcover. There are 6 of these editions that comprise the entirety of Tom King's run. Maybe one day we'll see some omnibuses. I know there are smaller trade paperback collections as well, but this run is really, really interesting. I think that we have a lot of Tom King's lyric prose style. I don't know how to describe it. I think that there's so many great Tom King books that almost read poetically in a way. King has always struck me as someone who really has a grasp for our language, and he just makes it really flourish. And to see that paired with a Batman book, especially as it approaches more romantic subplots like the Batman-Catwoman relationship, it was just a marvel to behold. I really found myself swept up in the narratives. This book also deals with the superheroes Gotham and Gotham Girl, really interesting characters to kick off this run and to see where Batman fits in the heroes of Gotham. I think it was a really great just relaunch into the Batman run, following things like the New 52. I think it was a perfectly good starting point, and I actually think this run heats up from here. I think that overall, this is one of my favorite Batman runs. It's not maybe my favorite. I'm not even sure if it's in the top 3, but it's up there. I really enjoyed it. I'm a huge fan. I've actually been considering doing a video that's a whole retrospective on the Tom King era Batman. If you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments below. Maybe I'll try to get that video going. But for now, I really, really liked this. I think it should absolutely deserve a second look. Or for those that maybe heard bad things about Tom King's Batman, I would encourage you, if you're interested, give it a read for yourself. Make your own decisions. I think that this run is really polarizing and maybe unfairly maligned. There's a lot of good here, and I think it starts with a bang. Definitely recommend this book. And last but certainly not least today, Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo Omnibus Volume 2. Yes, Volume 2, because right now I'm specifically talking about the back half of the Snyder Capullo Batman run for this Batman comics that deserve a second look. I'm focusing on the back half of this run because I believe a lot of people, maybe correctly, assert that the front half of the Snyder Capullo Batman era is the stronger half of the run. That includes things like the 0 Year story, the Court and Night of Owls. We have things like Death of the Family. And hey, there's certainly an argument to be made for this. In fact, I agree with it. I do think the front half of the Snyder Capullo Batman era is stronger, but I think that those that don't get to this second half of the run, well, frankly, they miss out on something. This half of the run contains stories like Endgame, Super Heavy, Bloom, the Epilogue, and even includes The Last Night on Earth. All of these stories are super unique, and this back half also really introduces us to a new role for Commissioner Gordon, which I really liked seeing. I know that there were a lot of interesting swings and choices done in the back half of this run that many Batman fans didn't enjoy that much, but for my money, I thought it was super creative and interesting. It let me see Batman and kind of Gotham as a whole in a different way, and I think to start with Court of Owls, where do you go from there? And the fact that Snyder and Capullo kept coming up with interesting and different directions for some of their main characters and their storytelling for their Batman run, I think it should absolutely be applauded. I think that it's really a disservice to readers out there if you only check out the Volume 1 or the first half of this run when there are so many great Batman stories to be told in the back half of this run. I will admit I'm very biased because this Snyder Capullo run is my favorite Batman run I've ever had the pleasure of reading, but I actually think that the back half is still so solid, and I think for those that maybe read it a long time ago or maybe have a kind of weird taste in their mouth from it, definitely give it a second look. I think that there's a lot of gems here that are overlooked a lot of times, and while it might just be my opinion, I had to include it here on the list today. Wow, I just mean, look at this art. How could you lose out on checking this out? It's absolutely spectacular. At any rate, definitely check out the full Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo run. Incredible. And that's really going to be our list today for 5 Batman comics I believe deserve a second look. I know many of you may not agree with my list, and that's perfectly okay. In fact, if you think there are others that should definitely be included in a list like this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Or maybe just share some of your favorite Batman comics or comics in general. I always like a good recommendation. I thought that the whole point of this video for me was just to get people to maybe reevaluate some of their notions about some of these runs, particularly if you've read it a long time ago, or maybe have never had an opportunity to read it, you've only heard other people's reviews, to maybe examine it afresh and to come to your own conclusions about the strengths of these stories. I had a blast preparing this video for all of you. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like and maybe share it with a couple friends. Thank you for that, and please have a good one.